From scraps to second chances, the beggar and his dog. The man had nothing. The dog had less. Then a stranger's kindness changed everything they thought they knew about survival. The cold concrete pressed against Marcus's back as he huddled in the doorway of an abandoned store on 5th Street. Beside him, a scraggly brown mutt named Rusty shivered, pressing his thin body against Marcus's leg for warmth. Together, they watched the endless stream of people hurry past, eyes fixed on smartphones, minds focused on destinations that seem a world away from this forgotten corner of the city. Marcus couldn't remember exactly when Rusty had become his companion. Maybe it was 8 months ago, or perhaps closer to a year. Time had a way of blurring when you lived on the streets. What he did remember was a day he found Rusty rummaging through a dumpster behind a Chinese restaurant, ribs showing through matted fur, one eye swollen shut from some long-forgotten fight. Marcus had only $2 to his name that day, but he bought a small bag of dog food instead of the sandwich he'd been craving. That single act of compassion had earned him the most loyal friend he'd ever known. Now, as the autumn wind cut through his threadbare jacket, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out the day's earnings, $3.47. He counted it twice, as if the numbers might magically change. They didn't. It had been a particularly rough week. The new coffee shop that opened down the block had hired private security, who made it their mission to clear the sidewalks of undesirables. Marcus and Rusty had been moved along 5 times in the past 3 days alone. "What do you say, boy?" Marcus whispered, scratching behind Rusty's torn ear. "Dollar menu again?" Rusty's tail thumped weakly against the ground. Even the dog knew their options were limited. The fast food restaurant 2 blocks away had become their lifeline. For $1 and change, Marcus could get a plain hamburger. He'd eat half, give Rusty the rest. On good days, when the manager wasn't watching, the teenage workers would slip them extra fries or a small cup of water. On bad days, they'd be told to leave before they even reached the counter. This was their life. This was survival. Scraps, megalas, crumbs of existence in a city that had millions, but no room for people who'd fallen through the cracks. Marcus hadn't always been homeless. There was a before, though he tried not to think about it too much. A before with an apartment, a job at a warehouse, a girlfriend named Sarah who made pretty good spaghetti. But addiction has a way of erasing befores, of burning bridges, until there's nowhere left to stand. The pills had started after work injury, just something to manage the pain. Then the pain became an excuse. Then the excuse became a need. Then the need became everything. Sarah left. The job disappeared. The apartment followed. And one day, Marcus woke up on a bench in the park with nothing but the clothes on his back and a crushing realization that he destroyed every good thing he'd ever had. If you ever felt like you've hit rock bottom, that there's no way back from the mistakes you've made, keep reading. Because sometimes redemption arrives in the most unexpected packages, through the most unlikely messengers. 3 years on the streets had taught Marcus the rules of survival. Keep your head down. Don't make trouble. Protect what little you have. Trust no one. Well, trust no human. Rusty was different. Rusty didn't judge. Didn't ask questions about the past. Didn't care that Marcus smelled like the street, or that his hands shook sometimes when the cravings hit hard. Rusty just stayed close, offering warmth on cold nights and companionship through the lonely days. On this particular evening, as Marcus counted his meager coins for the 3rd time, a woman stopped in front of them. This alone was unusual. Most people had perfected the art of not seeing the homeless, their eyes somehow sliding past as if Marcus and Rusty were invisible. But this woman stopped. She was maybe 60, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. She wore a long coat that looked warm, and she carried 2 shopping bags from the grocery store. "Excuse me," she said, her voice gentle but clear. "Is that your dog?" Marcus tensed. This was never a good question. Sometimes it preceded accusations of animal cruelty. Sometimes it came from people who wanted to rescue Rusty from the streets, as if being separated would somehow improve either of their lives. He'd learned to be defensive about Rusty because the dog was literally all he had left in this world. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied carefully. "His name's Rusty. I take good care of him." The woman smiled. It was a real smile, not the pitying grimace Marcus had grown accustomed to seeing. "I can tell you do," she said. "I've seen you two around the neighborhood for a while now. I've noticed how you always make sure he eats, even when it looks like you're going without." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. Was she watching them? The thought was unsettling. As if reading his mind, the woman continued, "I walk this route every Tuesday and Friday on my way to volunteer at the community center. I'm not trying to be creepy. I just notice things, and I've noticed you're a good man who loves his dog." "He's all I got," Marcus said simply, his hand moving to rest on Rusty's head. The woman nodded, understanding passing between them, without need for more words. Then she did something that caught Marcus completely off guard. She set down her shopping bags, opened her purse, and pulled out a crisp $50 bill. Marcus stared at the money, then at the woman, then back at the money. $50. That was food for a week, maybe more. That was a new pair of socks. That was possibility. "I can't," he started to say, but the woman cut him off. "Yes, you can," she said firmly. "Consider it a thank you for the lesson you've taught me." "Lesson?" Marcus was confused now. "Ma'am, I haven't taught you anything. You've taught me about real love," the woman said, her eyes glistening slightly. "About how true compassion means sacrificing for others, even when you have nothing to give. You feed your dog before you feed yourself. You keep him warm even when you're freezing. That's a kind of love that many people never learn, even with all the advantages in the world." She pressed the bill into Marcus's hand, and he felt the crisp paper against his calloused palm. It felt unreal, like it might vanish if he breathed too hard. "But here's the thing," the woman continued, not yet finished. "This isn't charity. This is an investment. I'm investing in you because I see something in you that I don't think you see in yourself yet. I see a man who's capable of love, loyalty, and sacrifice. Those are the building blocks of a good life. Marcus." He jerked slightly at the sound of his name. How did she know his name? "You told one of the workers at the coffee shop," she explained with a small smile, "when they asked what to write on your cup. I happened to be behind you in line." For a moment, Marcus couldn't speak. His throat felt tight, and his eyes burned in a way that had nothing to do with the cold wind. When was the last time someone had spoken to him like this? Like he was a person, not a problem. Like he had value, not just needs. "Thank you," he finally managed, his voice rough. "Thank you, ma'am. This means more than you know." "I think I have some idea," she said. Then she reached into her purse again and pulled out a business card. "This is for the community center where I volunteer. We have resources there, job training programs, counseling services, a medical clinic, even a pet-friendly shelter partnership for people in your situation. If you ever decide you want to try for something different, come see us. Ask for Helen. That's me." She picked up her shopping bags and started to walk away, then paused and looked back. "And Marcus, take care of that dog. He's lucky to have you, but I think you're pretty lucky to have him too." With that, she disappeared into the crowd, leaving Marcus standing there with $50 in his hand and something even more valuable, a seed of hope. What would you do with a second chance? Would you take it, or would fear keep you frozen in place? Marcus was about to face that very question. That night, Marcus and Rusty didn't go to the dollar menu. Instead, they went to a real restaurant, one with actual tables and waiters. Marcus ordered a cheeseburger with fries for himself and asked, somewhat nervously, if they could make a plain hamburger patty for his dog. The server, a young guy with a nose ring and kind eyes, didn't even blink. He brought out both meals with a smile and a bowl of water for Rusty. As Marcus ate his first real meal in longer than he could remember, he kept touching the business card in his pocket. Helen, Community Center, resources. The words played through his mind like a song he couldn't forget. For 3 years, Marcus had been stuck in survival mode. Wake up, find food, stay warm, stay safe. Repeat. There was no room for thoughts of the future, no energy for dreams or plans. The present was all-consuming, a constant battle against hunger, cold, and the crushing weight of failure. But now, with his stomach full and Rusty contentedly licking his empty bowl beside him, Marcus allowed himself to think. really think about what life could look like if he tried again. If he failed again, well, he'd already hit bottom. Could it really get worse? The addict part of his brain whispered that $50 could buy other things. Things that would make him forget the cold, forget the pain, forget everything. For a moment, the craving was so strong it made his hands shake. But then Rusty nuzzled his leg, and Marcus remembered what Helen had said. You feed your dog before you feed yourself. He'd been fighting his addiction for Rusty's sake, without even realizing it. Every time he chose food over drugs, every time he stayed clean, because Rusty needed him coherent and present. He'd been winning small battles. Maybe, just maybe, he could win bigger ones. The next morning, Marcus used some of Helen's money to go to a public shower facility run by a local church. He washed properly for the first time in weeks, scrubbing away layers of street grime. He used the last of the quarters in his pocket to wash his clothes at a laundromat, sitting in a plastic chair in a spare shirt while his jeans and jacket tumbled in the dryer. He even found a pet store that would let him give Rusty a bath in their self-service grooming station for $5. When they both emerged clean for the first time in forever, Marcus caught their reflection in a store window and barely recognized a man staring back at him. He looked younger, more human, less like a ghost and more like a person. Helen's community center was across town, which meant a long walk through neighborhoods that slowly transformed from commercial to residential. Marcus felt self-conscious despite being clean. He knew he still looked like what he was, a homeless man with a scruffy dog, hoping for help. The center itself was a converted church building with bright murals painted on the outside walls. Everyone welcome read a sign above the door, and Marcus hoped they meant it. Inside, the space was warm and bustling with activity. There was a food bank being organized in one corner, an ESL class happening in another room, and the sound of children laughing from somewhere upstairs. A receptionist at the front desk looked up and smiled when she saw Marcus and Rusty. "Can I help you?" she asked, and Marcus noticed she directed the question at him, not past him. "I'm looking for Helen," Marcus said, pulling out the business card with fingers that trembled slightly. "She told me to come by." The receptionist's smile widened. "Oh, you must be Marcus. Helen said you might come. She's in her office. Second door on the left down that hallway. And don't worry about your dog. We're pet-friendly here. There's even a water bowl and some treats at the end of the hall." How did the receptionist know his name? Had Helen really been expecting him? The thought was overwhelming. Helen's office was small but cozy, with plants on the windowsill and photographs of smiling people covering one wall. Helen herself was at her desk, and she looked up with genuine pleasure when Marcus knocked on the open door. Marcus and Rusty. She came around the desk to greet them properly, even kneeling down to scratch Rusty behind the ears. "I'm so glad you came. Please, sit down." As Marcus sat in the comfortable chair across from Helen's desk, Rusty settling at his feet, Helen pulled out a folder. "I want to start by saying that nothing I'm about to offer you is conditional," Helen began. "You don't owe me anything for that $50. You don't have to participate in any program if you don't want to. But if you're interested in making some changes, we have options. This is the moment that changes everything. When opportunity knocks, will you answer?" Marcus was about to discover that second chances don't just happen. They're built one small choice at a time. Over the next hour, Helen outlined possibilities Marcus had thought were closed in forever. The community center partnered with several organizations that specialize in helping people transition off the streets. There were subsidized housing options, including some that accepted pets, job training programs in various fields, free medical care, including addiction counseling, legal aid to help with documentation issues. The key, Helen explained, is taking it one step at a time. We don't expect anyone to transform overnight. Recovery and rebuilding are processes, not destinations. Marcus listened, his mind reeling. It all sounded too good to be true, and yet Helen was describing real programs with real results. She showed him photos on her office wall, success stories, people who'd been where Marcus was and had made it back. "I'm scared," Marcus admitted, surprised by his own honesty. "I've failed before. What if I fail again?" Helen leaned forward, her expression serious, but kind. "Marcus, let me tell you something important. Failure isn't the opposite of success. Failure is part of success. Every person on that wall failed multiple times. I failed before I got sober. My son failed before he graduated college. Failure is just proof that you tried. You're sober?" Marcus asked, something clicking into place. 15 years clean, Helen said proudly. "Alcohol almost killed me. Lost my marriage, almost lost my kids. Woke up in the hospital after my third DUI, and finally admitted I needed help. It was the hardest thing I ever did, and the best decision I ever made. This changed everything." Helen wasn't some do-gooder who couldn't understand. She'd been in the darkness. She knew the way out. "What's the first step?" Marcus asked, and even as the words left his mouth, he felt something shift inside him. Fear was still there, but alongside it was something new. Determination. The first step, Helen explained, was getting Marcus into temporary housing. There was a transitional living program specifically designed for people with pets, recognizing that for many homeless individuals, their animals were family. The program provided small efficiency apartments for up to 6 months, while participants worked on job training and saved money for permanent housing. "There's a spot available right now," Helen said. "If you're interested, I can make a call." Marcus looked down at Rusty, who gazed back with trusting brown eyes. "We can stay together?" he asked. "You can stay together," Helen confirmed. "Then yes, I'm interested." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Marcus moved into a small but clean efficiency apartment with Rusty. It had a real bed, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom with a shower that ran hot water whenever he wanted. The first night, Marcus couldn't sleep on the bed. It felt too soft, too strange after years on concrete and cardboard. He ended up on the floor with Rusty, but it was a clean floor in a warm room, and that alone was a miracle. The program required participants to attend counseling sessions and job training workshops. Marcus chose construction training, drawn to the idea of building things, creating something solid and permanent. The irony wasn't lost on him that he'd spent years tearing his life down and now wanted to learn how to build things up. The counseling was harder than the job training. Talking about his addiction, his failures, his shame meant confronting demons he'd been running from for years. Some sessions left him shaken, craving the escape that drugs had once provided. But then he'd come home to Rusty, who'd greet him with unconditional enthusiasm, and Marcus would remember why he was doing this. Helen checked in regularly, sometimes just stopping by to see how they were doing. She brought dog treats for Rusty and encouragement from Marcus. She was there the day Marcus received his first paycheck from a construction job the program had helped him secure. She was there when he fell off the wagon after 3 months clean, helping him back up instead of giving up on him. Relapse isn't failure, she reminded him during one of his darkest moments. It's just a detour. The path forward is still there. 6 months into the program, Marcus had saved enough for a security deposit on a small apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was his. He'd earned it. The community center held a small graduation ceremony for program completers, and Marcus stood in front of a room full of people to receive a certificate of completion. 3 years ago, I had nothing, Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly as he spoke to the gathered crowd. I was living on the street with my dog, surviving on scraps. I thought that was all I deserved, all I'd ever have. Then a woman named Helen gave me $50 and something even more valuable. She gave me hope. She showed me that my past didn't have to define my future. He paused, looking at Helen in the front row, at Rusty sitting alertly by her feet. But here's what I've learned. Change didn't happen because of that $50. It didn't even happen because of this program, as amazing as it is. Change happened because I made a choice, and then I made that choice again the next day, and the day after that. Every day, I choose to feed Rusty before I feed my addiction. Every day, I choose to show up for work even when it's hard. Every day, I choose to believe I'm worth saving. Your past is not your prison. Your mistakes are not your identity. Marcus learned that transformation isn't about one big moment. It's about 1,000 small choices that add up to a different life. What choice will you make today? A year after receiving Helen's business card, Marcus had transformed his life in ways he'd never imagined possible. He had a stable construction job that paid decent wages. He'd been promoted to crew lead after 6 months, his supervisor citing his reliability and work ethic. The apartment he shared with Rusty was modest, but felt like a palace compared to doorways and park benches. He'd even started attending NA meetings regularly and had a sponsor he could call when cravings hit. But perhaps the biggest change wasn't visible in his circumstances. It was in how Marcus saw himself. He was no longer the failure who'd lost everything. He was a survivor who'd found his way back. He was a man capable of love, loyalty, and hard work. He was someone worth investing in. Helen remained a constant presence in his life, though their relationship had evolved. She was no longer just a woman who'd helped him off the streets. She was a friend, a mentor, a second chance at family. They had dinner together once a month, always at the same restaurant where Marcus had taken Rusty for that first real meal. It had become their tradition, a way of remembering where they'd both been and celebrating how far they'd come. One evening, as they shared a meal and Rusty snoozed contentedly under the table, Helen made an unexpected announcement. "I'm retiring from the community center," she said. "Well, partially retiring. I'm reducing my hours to spend more time with my grandchildren, but there's a position opening up, and I'd like you to consider applying for it." Marcus set down his fork. "Me? Helen, I'm not qualified to work at the center." "You're more qualified than you think," Helen countered. "The position is for a peer support specialist, someone who works with newly housed individuals, helping them transition off the streets. Who better than someone who's been through it themselves?" The idea was startling. Marcus had been so focused on rebuilding his own life that he hadn't considered he might be able to help others do the same. "I don't know," he said hesitantly. "What if I'm not good at it? What if you're great at it?" Helen challenged. "Marcus, you have something that can't be taught in any training program. You have experience, empathy, understanding. You know what it's like to feel hopeless, and you know what it takes to find hope again. That's invaluable." Marcus thought about it over the next few days. The construction job was good, but it was just a job. What Helen was offering was a purpose, a way to turn his pain into something meaningful. It was terrifying and exciting in equal measure. He thought about all the people he'd met on the streets, the ones who'd given up on themselves because society had given up on them first, the ones who disappeared between one week and the next, claimed by cold or violence or despair, the ones who might still be out there, surviving on scraps, waiting for someone to see them. He thought about the moment Helen had stopped on the sidewalk and really looked at him, how that simple act of acknowledgement had been the first crack in the wall he'd built around himself, how her $50 had been less important than her recognition that he was a human being worthy of investment. Marcus applied for the position. During the interview, he was honest about his history, about the addiction, the homelessness, the struggles that continued even now. Instead of disqualifying him, his honesty made him the ideal candidate. The center wanted someone real, someone who could meet people in their brokenness without judgment because he'd been broken himself. He got the job. His first client was a young woman named Sarah. The name gave Marcus a jolt. His ex-girlfriend had been named Sarah too. But this Sarah was different. 23 years old, living in her car with a 2-year-old daughter after fleeing an abusive relationship. She was suspicious and scared, defensive in the way Marcus remembered being. "I don't need charity," she told him in their first meeting, arms crossed protectively. "I just need somewhere safe for me and my kid." "This isn't charity," Marcus replied, echoing Helen's words from long ago. "This is investment. The center invests in people because we believe you're worth it." He told her his story, not to compare their circumstances, but to show her that he understood, that he'd been where hopelessness lived and had found a way out. By the end of the meeting, Sarah's arms had uncrossed slightly, and she'd agreed to accept temporary housing while working with the center's programs. Watching Sarah's transformation over the following months reminded Marcus of his own journey. She fought every step of the way, resisting help even as she desperately needed it. But slowly, with consistent support and encouragement, she began to believe she deserved better. She completed job training. She found childcare assistance. She moved into her own apartment. The day Sarah came by Marcus's office to show him pictures of her daughter's third birthday party, celebrated in their own home with cupcakes and decorations, Marcus felt something he'd never experienced before. Pride, but not in himself. Pride in being part of someone else's victory. This was what Helen had meant about turning pain into purpose. Every struggle Marcus had endured, every dark night on the streets, every moment of despair had equipped him to do this work. His scars weren't marks of shame. They were credentials. We're all one bad break away from needing help, and one kind gesture away from hope. The question isn't whether you'll face hardship. It's what you'll do with it afterward. Will you let it define you, or will you let it refine you? 2 years after starting his job at the community center, Marcus's life had achieved the stability he'd once thought impossible. He'd been clean for 3 years. He had a savings account with actual money in it. He'd reconnected with his sister, who'd flown in from Oregon to visit and meet the brother she thought she'd lost forever. Their reunion had been tearful and healing, full of apologies and forgiveness on both sides. Rusty was getting older, gray creeping into his muzzle, his movements a bit slower. But he still greeted Marcus with enthusiasm every day, still pressed close on the couch during movie nights, still provided unconditional love without asking for anything in return. Marcus had taken him to a vet, getting him properly checked out and vaccinated for the first time in his life. The vet had said Rusty was probably around 12 years old, maybe older. He's in remarkable shape for a street dog, the vet had commented. Someone took good care of him. Marcus had felt a lump in his throat. He'd always thought of Rusty as the one taking care of him, providing purpose and companionship when he had nothing else. But maybe they'd been taking care of each other all along. One Tuesday evening, Marcus was leaving the community center when he noticed a man sitting in a doorway across the street. He was young, maybe mid-20s, with a backpack and a cardboard sign that read, "Hungry. Anything helps." There was no dog, but there was the same hollow look in his eyes that Marcus remembered wearing himself. Marcus approached carefully. He'd learned that the homeless don't always want to be approached, especially by former homeless people who might seem like they're flaunting their success. "Hey," Marcus said simply. "You hungry?" The young man looked up suspiciously. "Maybe. What's it to you?" "There's a place around the corner that makes pretty good burgers," Marcus said. "My treat." "I don't need your pity," the young man said, echoing words Marcus himself had spoken countless times. "Good," Marcus replied, "because I'm not offering pity. I'm offering dinner. Take it or leave it." Something in Marcus's tone must have convinced him, because after a moment, the young man stood up. "I'm Tyler." "Marcus, come on." Over burgers and fries, Tyler's story spilled out. Military veteran, PTSD, medical discharge, came home to find his girlfriend gone and his apartment given to someone else. Slipped through crack after crack in the system until he landed on the streets. "I thought I'd get back on my feet quick," Tyler said, staring at his plate. "But it's been 8 months. Once you're down here, man, it's like quicksand. Every day you sink a little deeper." Marcus listened, hearing echoes of his own journey. When Tyler finished, Marcus pulled out a business card, his own now, from the community center. "I work here," Marcus said. "We help people in situations like yours, veterans especially. Housing, job training, counseling. If you're interested." Tyler stared at the card. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you care?" Marcus thought about Helen, about that $50 bill and the investment it represented, about how one person's kindness had rippled outward, changing not just his life but Sarah's, and now potentially Tyler's. "Because someone cared about me when I was where you are," Marcus said honestly, and that changed everything. Tyler came to the community center the next day, then the next. Within a month, he was in transitional housing. Within 3 months, he was working part-time and attending therapy. Within 6 months, he was helping Marcus run support groups for other veterans experiencing homelessness. The cycle continued, rippling outward. Each person who was helped became equipped to help others. Each investment of time, money, and compassion multiplied exponentially. 3 years after Helen had stopped on that sidewalk, the community center held a fundraising gala. It was a fancy event with a fancy venue, nothing like Marcus's usual environment. but Helen had insisted he attend, claiming he was being honored for his work. Marcus wore a suit he'd bought specifically for the occasion. It was off the rack and probably didn't fit perfectly, but it was a suit purchased with his money for his achievement. Rusty had to stay home for this event, but Marcus had made sure he had extra treats and his favorite toys. At the gala, Marcus stood uncomfortably among people in expensive clothes, drinking expensive wine, talking about fundraising goals and program outcomes. He was about to sneak out early when Helen found him. "Not so fast," she said, linking her arm through his. "You're the guest of honor." "Helen, I think there's been a mistake." "No mistake. Come with me." She led him to the front of the room, where a podium had been set up. The crowd quieted as Helen tapped the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. I want to tell you a story about investment. About 3 years ago, I met a man named Marcus. He was homeless, living on the street with his dog, surviving on what most of us would consider nothing. But when I watched this man, I saw something remarkable. I saw him feed his dog before feeding himself. I saw loyalty, sacrifice, and love in its purest form. And I thought, this is someone worth investing in." Marcus felt his face grow hot as Helen continued. "I gave Marcus $50 that day. But more importantly, I gave him an invitation to believe he could be more than his circumstances. And do you know what he did with that? He didn't just transform his own life. He became a peer support specialist who has directly helped 47 people transition off the streets in the past 2 years. 47 people who now have housing, jobs, hope. And many of those 47 are now helping others, creating a ripple effect of positive change that continues to grow." Helen gestured to Marcus to join her at the podium. Reluctantly, he stepped forward. "What I learned from Marcus," Helen continued, "is that investment isn't about money. It's about seeing value in people that they may not see in themselves yet. It's about believing in potential even when circumstances suggest there is none. Every one of us in this room has the power to change someone's life. It doesn't take a huge gesture. Sometimes it just takes stopping, really seeing someone, and offering hope." She turned to Marcus. "Would you like to say a few words?" Marcus hadn't prepared anything. He hadn't even known this was happening. But as he looked out at the crowd of donors, volunteers, and community leaders, he knew what he wanted to say. "I used to think my life was over," Marcus began, his voice shaking slightly. "I thought I'd lost my chance at anything good. I was living on scraps, megalas, just trying to survive one more day. But then someone saw me, really saw me, not just a homeless guy with a dog, but the person underneath all the dirt and desperation. And that changed everything." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Here's what I want you to understand. Every person you pass on the street, every homeless individual you see, they're not statistics. They're not problems to be solved. They're people who ended up in circumstances that spiral beyond their control. And most of them have something valuable to offer if given a chance." Marcus felt emotion threatening to overwhelm him but pushed forward. "The $50 Helen gave me wasn't what saved me. What saved me was her belief that I was worth saving. That belief gave me permission to believe it too. So my challenge to everyone here is this. Don't just donate money, though that's important. Donate belief. See the homeless person as a person. Acknowledge them. Speak to them. Let them know they still exist, that they still matter. You have no idea how powerful that is." The room was silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. Several people were wiping their eyes. After the gala, as Marcus walked home to his apartment where Rusty was waiting, he thought about how far he'd come, from scraps to stability, from invisible to invaluable, from survivor to helper. But more than that, he thought about how Helen's single act of kindness had multiplied. 47 people housed, countless more touched through the ripple effects. And all because one woman had stopped, had seen, had believed. The ending is really a beginning. Marcus's story doesn't end here. It continues every day in the lives he touches, in the hope he offers, in the belief he pays forward. And your story? It's being written right now, in the choices you make, in the people you see, in the kindness you offer. 5 years after that fateful day on 5th Street, Marcus received a phone call that would bring everything full circle. "Is this Marcus?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "You don't know me, but you changed my brother's life. Tyler, you bought him dinner about 2 years ago and got him connected with the community center." Marcus remembered Tyler, though he'd lost track of him after Tyler had graduated from the program and moved to another city for a better job opportunity. "How is Tyler?" Marcus asked. "He's amazing," the woman said, emotion thick in her voice. "He's working for a nonprofit that helps veterans. He's engaged. He's happy. He's alive. And none of that would have happened if you hadn't stopped to help him. I called because I wanted to thank you for giving me my brother back." After the call ended, Marcus sat quietly for a long moment. Rusty, now 13 years old and moving slowly, patted over and rested his head on Marcus's knee. "Did you hear that, boy?" Marcus whispered, scratching behind Rusty's ears. "We helped save Tyler. You and me." Rusty's tail wagged gently, and Marcus felt tears running down his face. Happy tears, grateful tears. Tears for all the darkness they'd survived and all the light they found on the other side. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He got out of bed and went to his desk, where he wrote a letter, not to anyone specific, but to everyone who might need it. "Dear friend, if you're reading this, maybe you're where I was once. Maybe you're living on scraps, barely surviving, wondering if it will ever get better. Maybe you've made mistakes you think are unforgivable. Maybe you've lost everything and can't imagine finding your way back. I want you to know something. You matter. Your life has value. Your story isn't over. I was homeless for 3 years. I lived in doorways with my dog. I survived on scraps and the kindness of strangers who usually pretended not to see me. I was addicted to painkillers and had burned every bridge in my life. I thought I was beyond saving, but I wasn't, and neither are you. It started with one person who stopped and saw me, who believed I had value even when I couldn't see it myself, who invested $50 and a business card in a stranger who had nothing to offer in return. That small act of faith became the foundation of everything that followed. Recovery isn't a straight line. I stumbled. I relapsed. I doubted myself 1,000 times. But each day, I made a choice to keep trying. And those choices, added together over months and years, became a completely different life. Today, I help other people who are where I was. I've seen the same transformation happen over and over. People who society had written off, who had written themselves off, discovering that they still have value, purpose, and potential. It never stops being miraculous. Here's what I want you to take from my story. You are not your circumstances. You are not your mistakes. You are not the worst thing you've ever done or the lowest point you've reached. You are a human being with inherent worth and unlimited potential. If you're struggling right now, please reach out. There are community centers, nonprofits, churches, and organizations filled with people who want to help. Not because they pity you, but because they believe in you. Take that first step. Accept that business card. Walk through that door. Make that phone call. And if you're someone who has never been homeless, never struggled with addiction, never felt truly hopeless, I'm asking you to stop. Really look at the people around you who are struggling. See them. Acknowledge them. Believe in their potential. You have no idea what impact that simple act of recognition can have. The world is full of people living on scraps, waiting for someone to invest in them. Be that someone. Your friend in recovery, Marcus. He read the letter several times, then folded it carefully and put in an envelope. Tomorrow, he'd ask if the community center would publish it in their newsletter, maybe post it on their website. If it helped even one person the way Helen's kindness had helped him, it would be worth it. Rusty had fallen asleep on the floor beside the desk, his breathing deep and steady. Marcus watched him for a moment, this loyal companion who'd been with him through the darkest times. Rusty was getting old, and Marcus knew their time together was limited, but that just made every day more precious. "Thank you, boy," Marcus whispered, though Rusty couldn't hear him in sleep. "Thank you for not giving up on me when I'd given up on myself." 6 months later, the next chapter. The seasons changed, and with them came new challenges and new victories. The community center expanded its programs. adding a special initiative for people with pets experiencing homelessness. Marcus had proposed a program, drawing from his own experience with Rusty. People stay on the streets longer because they won't give up their animals. Marcus had explained to the board. They know most shelters won't take them with a pet, so they refuse help entirely. We need to meet them where they are and understand that these animals aren't just pets, they're family. The Pet Partnership Program, as it became known, was an instant success. Within 3 months, they'd helped 12 people transition off the streets, all of whom had been refusing shelter because they wouldn't abandon their animals. Marcus personally oversaw the program, ensuring every dog, cat, and even one rabbit received veterinary care, food, and a safe place alongside their human companions. One of the participants was an elderly man named Robert who'd been living under a bridge with 3 cats for over a year. Robert was a Vietnam veteran with PTSD who'd lost his housing after his wife passed away. The cats were all strays he'd rescued, and he'd been feeding them before feeding himself, just like Marcus had done with Rusty. "I can't leave them," Robert had said when Marcus first approached him about the program. "They depend on me." "Then don't leave them," Marcus replied. "Bring them with you." The look on Robert's face, disbelief giving way to hope, was something Marcus would never forget. Within 2 weeks, Robert and his 3 cats were living in a small apartment. Robert started attending therapy for his PTSD and eventually began volunteering at an animal shelter, finding purpose in caring for other abandoned creatures. "You gave me my life back," Robert told Marcus one day, "and you let me keep my family." "I know what it's like," Marcus said simply. "Rusty saved my life. I wasn't about to ask you to give up what saved yours." Sometimes the things we think make us weak, our attachments, our vulnerabilities, our need for connection, are actually what make us strong. Marcus learned that loving Rusty wasn't a liability. It was the very thing that kept him human, when everything else had been stripped away. Helen, now officially retired but still volunteering part-time, watched Marcus's work with pride. She'd known from that first encounter that he had something special, a capacity for empathy born from suffering, a strength forged in the fires of rock bottom. "You've exceeded every hope I had for you," Helen told Marcus over their monthly dinner. "And you've helped me exceed my own impact. Through you, I've been able to reach people I never could have reached on my own." "You gave me the tools," Marcus protested. "You did the hard work." "No," Helen said firmly. "I gave you an opportunity. You did the hard work." Never diminished that, Marcus. You made the choice every single day to keep fighting. That was all you. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Helen asked, "Have you thought about what comes next?" "What do you mean?" "I mean you've mastered the peer support role. You're ready for more responsibility. The center is looking for a new program director. I think you should apply." Marcus nearly choked on his water. "Helen, I don't have a degree. I barely graduated high school. I can't be a director." "Why not?" Helen challenged. "You have something better than a degree. You have lived experience, emotional intelligence, and a proven track record of success. You've personally helped over 100 people in the past 3 years. You've created a groundbreaking program. You understand both the struggles and the systems better than any academic possibly could. But, no buts. At least think about it. The center needs someone who understands a mission from the inside out. That's you, Marcus." The idea terrified him, but in a way that felt like possibility rather than impossibility. Marcus promised Helen he'd consider it. That night, sitting on his couch with Rusty's graying head in his lap, Marcus thought about how much his life had changed. He'd gone from counting coins for dollar menu hamburgers to considering a director position at a community center. From invisible to influential. From hopeless to hope giver. "What do you think, Rusty?" Marcus asked, running his hand along the dog's soft fur. "Am I crazy to even consider it?" Rusty looked up at him with those trusting brown eyes, tail wagging slightly, and Marcus felt his answer. Rusty had never doubted him. Not once in all these years. Maybe it was time Marcus stopped doubting himself. The interview that changed everything. Marcus applied for the program director position, though his finger hovered over the submit button for 10 minutes before he finally clicked it. The interview process was rigorous. Presentations to the board, meetings with staff, a comprehensive review of his proposed vision for the center's future. During his final interview, the board chair asked him a question that cut to the heart of everything. "Why do you want this job, Marcus? You could make more money in the private sector with your experience. Why stay in nonprofit work?" Marcus thought about all the easy answers he could give. The mission, the people, the impact, all of those were true, but they weren't the whole truth. 5 years ago, I was dying on the streets, Marcus said quietly. Not dramatically, not quickly, but slowly, a little bit every day. I'd given up on myself, and the world had given up on me. Then Helen stopped and saw me. She believed I had value when I was certain I didn't. That belief saved my life. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I want this job because I know what it's like to be invisible. I know what it feels like to need help and be too ashamed to ask for it. I know how hard it is to accept kindness when you think you don't deserve it. And because I know all of that, I can reach people that others can't. I can look them in the eye and say, "I've been where you are and there's a way forward," and they believe me because it's true. Marcus leaned forward, his passion evident. But more than that, I want this job because I've seen what's possible. I've seen Tyler go from sleeping in doorways to running his own veteran support program. I've seen Sarah go from living in her car to providing a stable home for her daughter. I've seen Robert go from feeding stray cats under a bridge to volunteering at an animal shelter. Every single one of them had potential that the world couldn't see. This job would give me the opportunity to help even more people discover their own potential. The room was silent for a moment. Then the board chair smiled. "Thank you, Marcus. That was exactly what we needed to hear." 3 days later, Marcus received a call. He'd gotten the job. When he told Helen, she cried. "I knew it," she said, hugging him tightly. "From the moment I saw you taking care of Rusty, I knew you were capable of extraordinary things." "I learned from the best," Marcus replied, his own eyes wet. His first day as program director was overwhelming. There were budgets to review, staff to manage, programs to oversee, and donors to cultivate. Marcus felt completely out of his depth, but he remembered what Helen had told him years ago. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to care and be willing to learn." So he cared and he learned. He made mistakes, but he owned them and grew from them. He asked questions when he didn't know something instead of pretending he did. He listened to his staff, many of whom had been working in social services longer than he'd been off the streets. And slowly he found his footing. One of his first major initiatives as director was expanding the Pet Partnership Program into a full-scale operation with dedicated staff and resources. He secured funding from animal welfare organizations who were thrilled to support a program that kept people and pets together. He partnered with veterinary schools to provide free medical care for the animals of unhoused individuals. He even started a small pet food bank specifically for people experiencing housing insecurity. The program became a model that other cities began to replicate. Marcus was invited to speak at conferences, to share his story and his insights with social workers, nonprofit leaders, and government officials. He was terrified the first time he stood in front of 300 professionals, but then he remembered. He wasn't there to impress them. He was there to represent all the people still living on the streets, still invisible, still waiting for someone to believe in them. The day everything came full circle. It was a Tuesday, exactly 6 years after Helen had stopped on the sidewalk and changed his life. Marcus was walking out of the community center after a long day when he saw a young woman sitting against the building. She had a small dog in her lap and a backpack beside her. Her sign read, "Homeless. Anything helps. God bless." Marcus felt time collapse. He was looking at himself from 6 years ago. The same desperation, the same exhaustion, the same love for an animal companion that had nowhere else to go. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Hi," he said gently. "I'm Marcus. Is that your dog?" The young woman looked up warily. "Yeah, his name's Scout." "Why?" "He's beautiful," Marcus said, and meant it. Scout was a small terrier mix with wiry fur and bright eyes. "How long have you two been out here?" 3 months, the woman said, her voice defensive. "I take good care of him. I feed him before I eat. He's healthy. I can tell you do, Marcus said. I did the same thing with my dog. His name was Rusty. The woman's defenses lowered slightly at the word was. What happened to him? Marcus felt a familiar tightness in his chest that came whenever he thought about Rusty. 3 months ago, the old dog had passed away peacefully in his sleep, curled up on his favorite spot on the couch. Marcus had mourned deeply, but he'd also been grateful. Grateful that Rusty had spent his final years warm, fed, and loved. Grateful that he'd been there with him at the end. Grateful for every moment they'd had together. He lived to be 15, Marcus said. He had a good life, especially the last 5 years. He died at home, surrounded by love. You got off the streets, the woman said, and it wasn't a question. I did, and I work here now. Marcus gestured to the community center behind him. We help people in your situation. We have a special program for people with pets. You and Scout wouldn't have to be separated. The woman stared at him, hope and disbelief warring in her expression. Really, if you're interested, we can go inside right now and start the process. Or if you're not ready today, I'll be here tomorrow. And the next day, and the day after that. The woman looked down at Scout, who gazed back at her with complete trust. Marcus saw the moment she made her decision. Okay, she said quietly. I'm interested. Her name was Jessica, and over the next few months, Marcus watched her journey mirror his own. The fear, the small victories, the setbacks, the slow building of self-worth. She moved into the transitional housing program with Scout. She started attending counseling for the trauma that had led her to the streets. She enrolled in job training. 6 months later, Jessica got her first apartment. Marcus helped her move in, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs alongside Tyler, who'd driven in from his new city specifically to help. Sarah was there too, with her daughter, now 5 years old, and excited to help arrange furniture. As they stood in Jessica's new living room, surrounded by donated furniture and new beginnings, Marcus felt the weight of everything that had happened, from Helen's $50 to this moment. The ripple effects of kindness had touched dozens of lives, and it would keep rippling outward, because Jessica had already started volunteering at the community center, wanting to help others the way she'd been helped. Thank you, Jessica said to Marcus as everyone was leaving. Scout was exploring his new home, tail wagging enthusiastically. You gave me hope when I had none. Someone did that for me once, Marcus replied. I'm just paying it forward. That night, Marcus went home to his apartment, which felt emptier without Rusty, but was still filled with evidence of the life he'd built. Photos on the walls showed him with Helen, with Tyler and Sarah, with Robert and his cats, with dozens of program participants who become friends. His degree in social work, which he'd earned through night classes over the past 3 years, hung framed on the wall. Letters of thanks from people he'd helped covered his refrigerator. But the thing he treasured most was a worn business card that he kept to frame on his desk. Helen's card, the one she'd given him 6 years ago. Beside it was a photo of Rusty, taken in the park on a sunny day, the old dog's face split in what looked like a smile. We did good, didn't we, boy? Marcus whispered to the photo. We help a lot of people. He could almost feel Rusty's presence, that faithful companion who'd never given up on him. And he thought about all the people who'd been part of his journey. Helen, who'd seen him when others looked away. Tyler, Sarah, Robert, and now Jessica. All the lives that had intersected and changed each other. This was the true miracle. Not that he'd survived, but that his survival had become a foundation for other survival. That his pain had been transformed into purpose. That the worst years of his life had equipped him to help others through their worst years. From scraps to stability. From invisible to influential. From hopeless to hope giver. Marcus's journey proves that no one is beyond redemption. No circumstance is permanent. And no act of kindness is ever wasted. His story continues every day in the lives he touches. And in the lives those people touch in turn. What will your story be? Will you be the person who stops and sees? The person who offers hope? The person who believes in potential even when circumstances suggest there is none? Or will you be the person brave enough to accept help? To believe you're worth saving? To take that terrifying first step toward change? The choice is yours. But remember, you're never alone, you're never beyond hope, and you're always, always worth the investment. Every day is a chance to begin again. Every moment is an opportunity to choose differently. And every person you meet is carrying a story you know nothing about, a story that might be changed forever by a simple act of kindness. Marcus and Rusty survived on scraps until one unexpected gesture changed everything. What unexpected gesture might change your life or the life of someone you meet today? The answer is waiting. All you have to do is stop, see, and believe. Marcus continues his work as program director at the community center, helping hundreds of people transition off the streets each year. Helen, now 85, still volunteers weekly and has lunch with Marcus every Tuesday. Tyler runs a successful veteran support program in another state. Sarah is completing her nursing degree. Robert volunteers at the animal shelter and has adopted 2 more cats. Jessica is 6 months into her new apartment and has started training to become a peer support specialist. The Pet Partnership Program has been replicated in 17 cities across the country. And somewhere in the city, right now, another person is sitting on a cold sidewalk with their loyal companion, waiting for someone to stop and see them. Will that someone be you?